welcome to our kitchen table. It's ladies' night.
Woo!
Yeah.
Very
ladies' fucking night.
Very ladies' night.
Let's give us some feminine energy in here. Yeah.
Yeah. As per usual, price is an integral part of ladies' night.
Ladies' night. Let's slice some cucumbers. Let's get some fucking face masks. Let's pour some wine.
Not in this house.
Not in this house. Let's pour some sparkling fruit juice. And let's fucking watch Mean Girls. Yeah!
I'm going to be honest. You always bring more ladies' night energy to ladies' nights than I do. But I do applaud the energy for sure.
I like a good bathrobe, you know?
I know.
And I know for some of you, ladies' night is like no door charge at the club or whatever. No, you've got that fucking wrong. Ladies' night happens exclusively at your place of residence.
Yeah, let me describe ladies' night that I'm sure everybody will relate to. First of all, Price is there, and
You got that fucking right.
He's invited over your one friend because you can only handle one friend at a time.
Yeah.
And he's bought both of you little goodie bags full of like face masks and maybe a new robe and other things that he found just delightful. And he has a movie planned.
Fucking disposable income, you know? What are you going to dispose it on?
Ladies' night.
Fucking let's go. We wear pink on Wednesdays, motherfuckers. Woo!
Okay, so it's ladies' night on the podcast. What does that mean?
We're talking about ADHD in ladies.
Yeah,
today.
ADHD in women.
Yeah, so if you're a woman or if you identify as a woman and you have ADHD, this one's for you. No charge at the door. Come on in. Have a seat at the table.
Entry's free if you're a woman and also free if you're anything else.
Yeah, well, my name is Price. It's ladies' night, and I married your therapist.
I'm Ash, and I'm your therapist. Please keep in mind that even though this is a podcast about therapy and mental health, it's not the same thing as or a replacement for therapy.
And something about I'm sitting here with my wife, your therapist. I think I say that.
Yeah, that was supposed to be in there somewhere.
Fuck it, it's ladies' night. We're getting a little sloppy.
Is ladies' night inherently sloppy to you? Is that what we're saying?
I have never participated in a ladies' night that wasn't extremely sloppy.
I'm going to withhold my comment.
3 years sober. I'm sure you have plenty of comments. I'm sorry. So today I'm excited to sit down with you because we had a listener write in because we were asking people to email us with their thoughts on the podcast and any topics that they wanted us to cover. And one person, Miranda, shouts out, hit us up and asked us for our thoughts on ADHD in women.
Yeah.
So I have cornered you, sat you down, gotten you to research this a little bit.
Caught me unawares, brought me here. Not sure what's happening.
It's consensual. Ladies' night is all about consent.
That's right.
And we are off to a really weird fucking start.
Yeah.
Do you want to do this over?
I guess.
Nah.
Okay, I'm good. Let's go.
Okay.
I want to heads up, everybody. I've had a cold this week, and so I sound like this.
You sound fine to me.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Okay,
Okay.
let's go.
Any other just random bits of information that we should know?
Yeah, I have some random bits of information about ADHD in women.
Well, that's not random. That's the top. Okay. All right.
Yes.
Ladies' night. Ladies' night. Okay. So, I have ADHD.
Yes.
I'm not a lady.
No.
Although, I have some ladies in my life whom I love dearly.
I too have a mom and a sister.
I have a mom and a sister and a wife, a loving wife.
Okay.
I think that there's a little caveat, a little asterisk that we've kind of been tossing around when we talk about ADHD in women that I just would love to get out of the way, like right out the gate. Kind of what we've been chatting about today in preparation for this episode. Before we dive into like specific things, specific ways that ADHD presents in women, what's the caveat? What's the disclaimer?
Well, two things to say. One is that we're talking about ADHD in women because ADHD does seem to present very differently in women. And for the longest time, we only thought it presented in men. Well, really in boys. I think for a long time we actually thought people grew out of ADHD, that it was like a childhood.
Grew grow out of ADHD.
The ADHD only got stronger.
No, we just learned to lie as adults.
So that's important. That's significant. And there are so many women who've been missed with an ADHD diagnosis who should have been able to get one and get access to support.
Well, it's the same thing we were talking about with autism, is all this research and this diagnosis criteria was based on a certain subset of the population.
Yep.
It continues to be inexplicably white boys, white wealthy boys. How is that? That's so coincidental that keeps happening.
Weird.
It just boggles my mind. Like, of all the different populations out there that we can
Once
study,
again, white boys? Okay.
boys, man, I feel well represented. I'm realizing now our listeners may not have put two and two together. I am white.
And one of the proverbial boys.
One of these boys you speak of. Yeah, it's just a compounding issue when we talk about neurodivergence in traditional diagnoses, because we base all of our research in kind of like, there's been very little evolution of our knowledge of these things, like formally, even though like our literal knowledge, like our understanding between the two of us.
So the population that we studied it in were like white boys. The tests that we developed were developed to test those white boys, and the norms of those tests. So how we standardize those tests and tested to make sure that they're valid. Yeah. All about little white boys. So even the very official things that we have to measure ADHD will miss women. But here's the caveat. So women don't have a whole different diagnosis than men do. That ADHD is ADHD. There are a couple different types. There's inattentive and hyperactive, which I think we'll get into, and mixed. But in general, ADHD is the same. It's not that women have a different type of ADHD. It's that if you were raised as a girl, there were certain social expectations. And so you had to learn to manage your ADHD in a certain way that no longer fits this existing definition that we had. And so it got missed. And so here's what you might notice if you are raised where it was just missed and why it might have been missed.
I want to talk to me like 8 years ago right now. Okay, if you're listening, Price. I'm bad at math, but 2015. If you're listening, no, we're not trying to make everything about race, okay? These motherfuckers only studied a certain group of people, and life and social expectations are different between different demographics of human beings. White boys are expected to behave differently than women, or even black boys or brown boys, or just any other social group. And so the ways that these things present, even though our brains are the same, and the ways that these things impact our brains are the same, the ways that we're able to present ourselves in a socially acceptable way are vastly different between these groups. You numbskull. You fucking numbskull. Okay, so Price, get your head out of your ass, all right, and listen. Okay.
So, right, that's the other part of this caveat, is that while, yes, a lot of women, I think, are going to relate to this, a lot of people who just weren't allowed to the privilege of acting like a hyperactive little white boy are also missed in this. So a lot of black and brown kids are missed in this, even if they're also a boy. A lot of non-binary folks who didn't fit into either of those categories well or didn't view themselves that way. People who were raised in families where they just weren't able to act certain ways, or have dealt with certain types of trauma. Like, a lot of people get missed in these diagnoses, and it does come down a lot of times to culture and the way that we treat people. So this is ladies' night. It's for the girls.
Ladies' night.
But you might find yourself relating to this and not fall in that category of identifying as a woman. And that's probably because other things happened in your life that prevented you from being able to present in this one stereotypical way.
That said, let's get back to fucking ladies' night, shall we? Okay. No, I think that's an important caveat, and I'm glad we got to touch on that. So. Yeah. I told you, as we were kind of preparing for this episode, we should do like the "you might be a redneck if" sort of thing. So I think that I want to read like "you might be a woman with ADHD," but I'm going to read it in a country accent, and I just want everybody to know why, okay?
Okay, here we
go. You might be a woman
No, we got to stop. I cannot.
Damn it. Okay, I gave it a shot. You might be a woman with ADHD if you feel that you have to work 2 to 3 times harder than your peers at work or at school.
Yep.
You're the therapist. Expound on that.
True. Okay, no. Yeah, I have a lot of clients who present this way, that either they are, well, usually I'm working with like college and grad students at that age, or maybe they're in a job and they feel that same way, that they have to work a lot harder than their coworkers to get their job done. And so this is just describing maybe somebody who's always just felt like they're inherently bad at school.
Yeah.
Or it's describing somebody who has done okay in school. Maybe they've even made it into like a really esteemed program and are working in like a graduate program and going into a really challenging field. And they just feel like the things that I hear from them are, I'm just not good like everybody else. Like, I just have to study 2 or 3 times as much. Like, my other friends in the program, they study and then they go out and do things, and I just can't do that. If I don't do that, I'm going to fail these tests.
Do you feel like that self-reflection is, like, accurate? Do you think that these people actually do have to study 2 or 3 times harder? Or is that just, like, a self-imposed pressure that they feel? Like, are they really that behind, you know,
yeah.
and they really require that much effort just to stay afloat? Or are we really just working ourselves to death because we feel like we have to, you know?
I think that there are 3 things maybe at play that come to mind.
Okay.
And as soon as I say this, I'm going to forget what the other 2 are. So good luck to me. But that's where my brain is at today. The first thing is that they've probably been told all throughout their life that they're just bad at school. They've probably been told that they don't try as hard. A lot of these people will be told, they'll tell me things like, yeah, my teachers used to tell me all the time that I just don't like proofread enough. But I would proofread. Like, I would try to check. I would look for stuff, and I'd still turn in things with errors. So they've just been like told again and again and again, and that like story of their life is that they're just bad at school. It's almost impossible to feel really good and confident in a setting like that, especially as things continue to get more challenging. To feel like you're going to do well when you've been told this whole time to expect failure. So I think that that can be part of it.
So you've been told that you're going to fail, so to preempt that, you're working much harder.
Yeah. So that's like the self-perception.
Okay.
Another thing that I think is at play is that I don't think that we teach neurodivergent kids well. I think that school instructions are often vague. There's a lot of stuff you're kind of supposed to come in knowing how to do and what to do and what's expected of you. I think that out-of-the-box thinking is often punished or looked down upon. And neurodivergent folks tend to be really out-of-the-box thinkers. That tends to be one of their strengths, is that they're creative and think of different solutions. And I think that all of that is kind of put down. I've had quite a few ADHDers and autistic folks, but who would like write on a subject and their teacher would just like disagree with it and not grade it well.
Right.
So I think that
that reminds me, when I was in college,
yes,
I wrote a paper. We were supposed to write papers on, it was like a multicultural marketing or communications class, and we were supposed to write a paper on somebody that we met and interviewed from a different culture. And you know that I sat down with one of my coworkers from UPS who lived in the same and was born and raised in the same city as me, but was born and raised in a really low-income, impoverished neighborhood, and his life was completely different than mine.
Yeah.
We lived miles from each other, and we had completely different lives.
Yeah.
And I wrote a really incredible paper based on a conversation with him about the ways that our lives were different. He was literally the same age as me, and we couldn't have had different experiences.
What a great comparison, too. I think for a paper like that, what a great person to compare your life to, where you do live in this really close proximity to one another. You're the same age, and yet you've had vastly different experiences.
Our lives had no overlap at all. We had nothing in common save a geographic location. And my dumb... What did we say instead of saying something negative about somebody's IQ? My asshole professor, who I think probably was extraordinarily unintelligent, said that that wasn't a different culture, that we weren't technically from a different culture.
Right.
And although I admit with some bitterness that I understand what the professor was saying, it was a good, it was a good paper. I met some asshole from Finland who wrote a paper about her life, and I got an A on it, and it was like, my other one was better, you know?
And that's exactly what I'm talking about with giving vague instructions, where I think that that's a perfectly reasonable guess at what that prompt means.
Yeah.
To me, like, embracing people who are out of the box thinkers, I love that. I would love to have a student who reads my prompt and has a completely different take on what I thought I was going to get. I'm good with that.
Imagine this professor who like received this assignment and I cared about it.
Yeah.
It was like, I'm not even sure
right.
if he read it.
Right, that you were like invested in it. You did the work. You did the interview. Yeah.
Yeah, it was great.
What a loss. I hate that. But that's a thing that happens a lot. I will hear that all of the time. That like, I got a 0 on my paper. I got a 50% on my assignment that was like, oh God, what did somebody say recently? They lost like 40 points for missing one thing or something. It was just so ridiculous. And it's something like that where the teacher was like, this is fundamental to the lesson I was trying to teach. And it's like, no.
Yeah.
Then you should have been clear about that. And so that's the other thing I think that we do is that we can be very vague with our classroom instruction.
And neurodivergent people, ADHD especially, folks, we desperately need you to be specific. Not because we're unintelligent, but because we think so big, our brains are so much wider and so much more creative that if you are looking for a specific result, you need to give specific instructions, or else I might write a paper about somebody down the street from me as opposed to somebody from a different country.
Yeah.
Because you said culture, and there can be multiple cultures in a single fucking city, you asshole! Fuck!
Yeah.
I'm so worked up over that.
You should be. It was really unfair. And I feel that way when like clients come to me and say, my teacher counted me off for this thing or didn't read my paper because of this. And it's like, if they cared that much about it, they probably should have said, and by culture, I mean specifically this and this, and this will not be accepted. I want to take that college professor to
one of my family reunions and one of Vernon's family reunions.
Yeah.
Because they were two very different events.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I think that it's valuable. And again, like, you are an engaged student, and so in addition to like point number 1, which is you're being told you're wrong all of the time or you're bad at school, I think there goes my voice. I think to keep being told that you just don't understand things, where like it would have been so easy for you. You were just having this experience in like a college setting. Yeah. And you had been homeschooled before that. I think
don't say that.
Well, we just talked about that.
Don't say that.
You had been absent, standardized from a standardized classroom setting prior to then. No clue what was happening. If that had been your experience all through school, you would have lost interest. Yeah. You would have been like, well, then fuck this. I just don't care.
I did lose interest in the class almost immediately because it wasn't like, hey, man, I should have been more clear in what I was looking for. It was, you didn't understand what I wrote. And it was, of course, immediately like my fault, and I internalized it as like I'm idiotic for not getting this, you know. And so many people live their lives like that. So many people, that's been their experience in school.
So then you walk away with that, I just don't do this well. Yeah. I just don't understand assignments well. Teachers are obviously very clear in their instruction because they tell me so, but I don't understand it. I don't get it. The third thing that I think happens, one, is that they're struggling with some specific aspect of ADHD, that they're very bored because their brain is going so fast and school is just at whatever pace it's at. And so they're bored, or they're having trouble focusing enough to study well, or they just haven't learned good study skills in general. And one of those things is getting in the way. So those are kind of the three.
If you feel like you're having to work 2 or 3 times harder.
I think that those things are at play.
And there's something I want to say to all of my ladies out there who feel like they have to work 2 or 3 times harder at work than their peers, okay? And we're not talking about, like, I have to work harder than the men in my office. We're just like, I have to work harder than everyone in my office. Yeah. There is a possibility, there is a distinct possibility that you take more pride in your work and you care more about what you do as a nature or as a attribute of being ADHD than the other people that you work with. So you feel like you're having to work harder, and the reality is that you're just working harder because you care about the end result.
Yeah.
And I have something that has taken me a long time in my career to understand is that there are a lot of people who are very content to collect a paycheck and just collect a paycheck and don't really care about getting anything productive done. Like, I have dreams and aspirations for my career. Mm-hmm. It's very important to me that I'm actually able to be productive and producing and can point to this thing and like look at what I got accomplished and how I helped this team. Yeah. And I have felt that way at every job that I've had, even if it was like a minimum wage job. Yeah. I want to contribute, and I want to be able to point to my contribution and say, look at what I have accomplished.
And I think that it might be something about being neurodivergent, but you and I both put a lot of ourselves into our work.
Yes.
That like our work feels like a representation of us. It feels like a way to like show off our strengths and the things that we care about. And even when we've worked in fields that have nothing to do about a real passion of ours.
Yeah.
That we like really care about the stuff that we're doing. And when it gets overlooked, the same thing can happen that happens in a classroom where like we put a lot of work and emphasis on something and somebody just doesn't get it, or a company changes course because that's what companies do. And we're like, fuck, this is about me. I just don't do this well.
Right.
Yeah.
And then we place so much emphasis on like positive reinforcement from our colleagues and our bosses to like give us that positive feedback, because it's like, this is me. You're affirming me and my whole existence by complimenting me on a job well done.
Do you like me? Do you care about me?
Here's the secret, ladies, those corporations and your bosses, even the bosses you like, will ride that to the horizon line. Right, they will take you to task. They love that extra effort because it makes them look good.
For the same amount of pay, you'll work like 3 people. Okay, bring it.
Yeah, so if you feel like you have to work 2 or 3 times harder than your colleagues, make sure that you have clear, defined goals of what is expected of you. And don't do a goddamn thing beyond those goals unless there is a tangible benefit to it for you.
That brings me to one more point with all of this.
Yes.
A lot of the times with ADHD in women, or just humans who've had to mask their ADHD a lot, there's a lot of perfectionism that's there to try to accommodate feeling behind. And that'll definitely impact you in school or in work.
Yeah.
That you're not able to settle for less than like this unachievable perfect standard.
Yeah.
And that'll trip you up every time.
Yeah.
I had a client experience that I was just like so proud of. And you know that I really try hard to be very vague, but something that I do for ADHD folks is a lot of visual reminders. And so I was working with an ADHD client and we were setting up some visual reminders. And she came back the next week and she's like, I didn't write out the visual reminder because it didn't look perfect. I wrote it and she showed me. And she's like, I wrote it on this page and this page and this page and it just didn't look perfect. And this is a thing I hear about a lot.
Yeah.
And it was like, okay. And so we just decided to be really gentle about it. Like, instead of making that bad, not only did you fail to meet your perfect standard, but also now you're in trouble somehow. Like, that wasn't good enough that you didn't.
Yeah.
It was just really easy. It was like, okay, yeah, that makes sense. Well, let's talk about perfectionism. So we talked about it. We moved on. We left it behind. If this helpful habit doesn't work for you, then it's not helpful. We'll pick something else. So we focused on other things. And a couple weeks later, I came back and she had made an imperfect one. And I was just so proud of her. And like, that's what we're looking for.
Yeah.
And it was like the imperfect one did the job and a perfect one didn't do any job at all because she couldn't get it. And that's how I feel in like work and in school. Like, the imperfect ones get the job done.
I think that a lot of this keeps coming back to work or school because that's when we're like, we got to be on, baby. We got to be, you know.
Oh, yeah. This can apply everywhere, too. I feel like I have to work 2 or 3 times harder than everybody to keep my house clean.
Yeah.
I have to feel like I have to work 2 or 3 times harder to stay organized, to remember appointments, to do whatever.
And hummingbirds got to watch human videos slowed down. That was the most ADHD thing I've ever said. So when we watch hummingbird videos, we slow them down, right? We watch them in slow-mo because their wings are moving faster than the human eye can perceive, right? Uh-huh. Well, when hummingbirds watch videos of humans, they have to speed us up.
Right.
That's what I was trying to... Fuck. This really got
I
away
know
from me.
exactly what you're talking about.
They have to speed us up. This sounds so unintelligent. This is actually a really deep thought, ladies. Bear with me for a second. If you have ADHD, your brain is working faster.
Yeah.
Your brain works faster than most people's brains. Doesn't mean you're smarter. It does mean you're smarter. Don't tell anybody I told you that. It doesn't mean that you're like
From
evolved.
one ADHD to another.
Don't tell anyone that it makes you smarter. It does actually make you smarter. Welcome to being ADHD. Welcome to the club. Your brain's, of course you feel like you're working twice as hard because your brain's working twice as fast. You're like a little hummingbird. Everybody's got to watch you slow down to be able to see what's going on with you. Mm-hmm. You don't know what it's like to be somebody else working on cleaning your house or working at your job. You don't know. Your brain isn't like everybody else's.
Yeah.
And just like they don't know what it's like to be you. So cut yourself a little slack. Give yourself a little credit.
When your brain is going a mile a minute while you're accomplishing the task that you are. And so that means that you end up getting on other topics because you've exhausted this one, ready to go on to the next one. And this one reminded you of this. And your brain is so interconnected and beautiful and incredible. Just imagine... Some people they're dealing with a brain that's just like, okay, I'm thinking about the task that I'm doing. Okay, now I'm thinking about this next. Like that exists, and it's not your brain, and that's okay. You're really working with a different brain.
Yeah. Okay, let's do another one.
What are we going to get to 2 of these?
You might be a lady with ADHD.
Price, I think you might be a lady with ADHD.
I really am? You think so?
Tonight you are.
It's ladies' night. We're all ladies tonight. Am I right, fellas? Okay, so you start your day with coffee, and you end your day with wine or weed. Hardcore. How many of y'all are listening right now and you're like, I feel so called out right now. Like, I have to have my coffee in the mornings. Mm-hmm. And to unwind, I have to have a substance to unwind. Because, girls, I am there. Ladies, I am there. I am with you. Every morning, I want a cup of coffee. And every night, I want to unwind with some booze or some marijuana. And ain't booze anymore, but that doesn't mean I don't want to. Yeah. It just means that I don't anymore.
Yeah.
And I used to have a gummy, an edible, of marijuana every day after work because I felt like I couldn't settle down without it.
Yeah.
Now, my homeboy, Dr. Aris, my psychiatrist, hooked me up with a medication that gives me a little dopamine. So I'm not looking for dopamine hits throughout my day in the same way. So I'm not after the marijuana in the same way. Mm-hmm. Been huge for me.
Yeah.
But if that's you, if you like to unwind with a little vape or whatever, no shame, no harm, no foul. But what's happening in our brains, Ashlyn? Why is that kind of the process that we want like a stimulant in the morning? And this is specific to ADHD. Like we were looking for a stimulant in the mornings and we're looking for a depressant in the evenings. Something to get us up and going and something to wind us down. And I'm sorry, I know I just asked you a question, but I feel like we're a fucking jet engine, you know? It takes a little bit for us to get going, and then it takes a whole lot for us to get, like, slowed down.
My favorite thing is that every ADHD episode we do is like this. It's like an ADHD, like, fucking trip, and I love it.
It's ladies' night. What can I say?
It's your night, Price. You know? I think that you just answered the question.
I don't even need you for the Ladies' Night ADHD episode.
I'm just going to be back here. I'll be sipping my tea. You do your thing, lady.
Okay. Thanks, lady. No, seriously, make this sound smarter than it is.
Yeah, so that's what we're noticing in folks with ADHD, and this is more specific to ADHD than like most neurodivergence in general, because a lot of this stuff might have some overlap. But ADHD folks tend to be looking for something to get them going, tend to be looking for a stimulant. And a stimulant in ADHD folks, rather than like waking you up and making you zip around, which at some level your ADHD does anyway, it actually just helps you to distribute your focus the way that you want. That it tends to help people to focus on what they want, to get to pick those things, and to get to feel more like a human being going throughout their day, which is why not only will ADHD folks start the day with coffee or soda or something else, but they'll continue to have that all day long.
Yeah.
Probably into the evening.
Just doing little bumps of Coke throughout the day.
Exactly. Yeah, but no, it's really like you have a difference in your brain, and the stimulant stimulant helps to accommodate that difference in your brain. And so you're self-medicating with that. And especially folks who aren't taking some sort of ADHD medication, that might be one of the first signs that they notice is, oh yeah, I can't do my day without coffee. Like, I, an autistic, love to start my day with coffee, but I start it with a rule. I start it 2 hours after I've woken up, because that's the point in the day where the caffeine no longer messes with the way that your body processes things and needs to wake up. And I have one delightful cup of coffee and I sip it for, an hour, hour and a half, until it's nice and cold. And then I don't want it again until the next day. And it does nothing for me other than being a delicious drink.
I can attest. You do not drink coffee for the caffeine.
No.
You just drink it because you love the way it tastes.
Yeah.
End of story.
It's become my routine now, and I love a routine.
Yeah, it's like a little self-care thing. Yeah. But if you're like listening to this podcast, it's Monday morning, you're headed to work, you're white knuckling a fucking Starbucks cup right now.
Right. It's.
I'm not your doctor, but I'm pretty sure that means you have ADHD.
It's 10 a.m. You're on your third cup of coffee. Like, you might want to find out if you're ADHD, and then. You've had all of this stimulant, and also your brain is going a mile a minute just in general. And so you're getting to the end of your day and you can't fucking calm down or wind down. You can't get your brain to slow down. You're feeling wired. You're having a hard time doing the things you want to do. And so then people are going to crave marijuana. They're going to crave alcohol. They're going to crave something that helps them like fucking settle into their evening.
Oh, yeah.
And so for you, that was your big transition, is during your day, you'd have a lot of caffeine. And then as soon as work was done, you'd want something else. You're like, I can't relax without this. I need something to help me rest. And if you're really dependent on these outside things to do that for you, you might be ADHD.
Doesn't mean you're broken. Doesn't mean that you're evil. You know, you're just compensating for the differences in your brain with the substances that are available to you.
You're noticing a real thing happening, and you are I was going to say, you're a resourceful human. I was going to say you're a very cute and resourceful human, because I just love humans, but and you're trying to accommodate that. But there's a real thing happening that you're trying to balance out.
And if you like coffee and you like wine, that doesn't mean you're ADHD, but ADHD people can use those substances to that effect, you know?
Yeah.
But sometimes you're just a messy bitch. You know, sometimes that's the diagnosis for you.
Yeah, that's fine too.
Okay, let's move on. Sometimes, if you're a woman with ADHD, you spend a lot of time looking for things.
Yep.
What are we talking about? Looking for love? Looking for happiness? Or looking for my fucking car keys?
I mean, maybe all of the above, but for sure the car keys.
Right. That's really what we're talking about here.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
So we've talked about this before, but that has to do with object permanence. And people with ADHD tend to struggle with object permanence, which is just being able to keep track of where things are in space and time, basically.
I'll say the same thing I said the last time we talked about this. It makes it sound like ADHD people are really just infants. Because object permanence is like something that infants begin to develop, where like the peekaboo game is so fun for a little kid, because they're like, oh, well, you fucking disappeared. Where'd they go? But no, it's like, I will place my keys down somewhere, and then I will walk away, and then when I need my keys again, what I'm understanding is that some humans actually remember placing the keys down, is what I'm being taught, what I'm learning. And of course, nobody really
Correct me if I'm wrong here.
Yeah, correct me if I'm wrong, but nobody actually remembers where they put their keys, right? Like, I don't remember that. I don't have in my mind's eye, oh, they're on the counter. I have to search my regular haunts. I have a list of places I check in the house.
And it's not just places where you normally set down your keys, but also everywhere you might have gone when you got home. Yeah. If you could remember that path.
Yeah, that's not how my brain works. And that doesn't mean, like we say, you struggle with object permanence. We're not calling you an infant. We just mean that your brain, you know, is kind of like a little baby.
And that really has to do with those like filters that we've talked about. So an ADHD brain filters out what is not novel, interesting, challenging, or urgent.
Yeah.
And where you put down your keys no longer have relevance to you when you're setting them down. You've done your driving, you're coming home. Yeah. Now you're on to your next part of your day. Yeah. And that's probably got your focus and attention. And so your keys are just being left. There's not a lot of thought behind where you're putting them. So one of our tips for that, which we talk about in the other episode as well, but is having a collection spot, making it part of your habit and routine, and having that collection spot be out in the open, somewhere really easy to continue to access and to build that habit of putting your keys in there.
Yeah, because you're not going to remember where you put them, but if you always put them in the same place, then you know where your keys are without actually remembering them. But also, ladies, remember that this doesn't mean that you're unintelligent. This doesn't mean that you're stupid. You know, there might be a NASCAR driver who's really bad at parallel parking. You know what I mean? Like your brain's working at a higher level than other humans. You know, we are superior. We are banding together. I will be sending you codes to your via text, and we will be overtaking the world soon. If we could just remember where we put our fucking keys.
But where I put that damn code.
What I'm trying to say really is that you might struggle with those things, and that might make you feel really frustrated and dumb in the moment, because I've been there a million times. But again, give yourself some credit. Your brain works differently, and look for simple solutions to these things. Look for like simple, easy to approach solutions for these problems.
Right. It really is that your brain is different, and also, your brain is focused on important stuff. Your brain does such a great job filtering your world and focusing on what's important, that it's not paying attention to something like keys. And in the grand scheme of human life, like where you set down your keys when you come home, that's just not a priority. Yeah. That's good. That's a great thing that your brain has this really strong filter, but it is a pain.
A more boring human, a neurotypical normie might say, well, isn't it important?
We love our normie allies, Bryce.
In the same way a hummingbird loves a human, I'm sure, you know. What was I saying?
I distracted you.
Yeah, I got distracted. This is some ADHD shit right here.
We were just talking about leaving your keys somewhere and why that doesn't mean your brain is broken.
Yeah. You might... I'm really reaching for anything to say here because I've completely forgotten.
Okay, I'm going to talk for a second and then you can remember.
Thank you so much.
This might also look like not only do you spend a lot of time looking for things, but you're like leaving your cups beside your bed and you end up getting a collection of them. And so you might have a lot of shame not only around losing stuff, but also around like not keeping a neat home.
Clutter, yeah.
And doing those sorts of things. And if
that's what I was saying. Your normie brain might say, well, isn't it important where your keys go? Yes, it is, but not if I have something else to do. And that's what ADHD is for me, is like I'm focused on the next thing, not thinking multiple steps ahead, you know, and that doesn't mean that I'm of less value. It just means that my brain is different. Yeah. In fact, like part of my job, part of what I do for a career is like process engineering. I get to help businesses think of like how to set up business processes. Like the phone call comes in here, we take the order is processed here, you know, and then it goes to the manufacturing floor, like that sort of thing. I'm like really good at that because I think about the next thing, you know. Try to find ways to cater your job, play to your strengths is what I'm really thinking about.
And something you're also really good at in your work is telling people when something is not important. Is like, why are we focused on that right now? Because your brain is so naturally good at sorting out what is urgent, what's of importance right now, what has nothing to do with right now, and let's get rid of that. Yeah. And a lot of time is wasted in jobs and school talking about things that are not relevant.
Ladies, let's get those beautiful nails that we've just gotten done for our pedicure for ladies' night. Is it manicure or pedicure for the fingers? Manicure. We got manis, ladies, and middle fingers, beautifully lotioned fingers up to all of the professionals and the teachers and the parents who told us that we're stupid because we forgot where we put our keys. Yeah. You know, just play to your own strengths. That's what I'm going to keep saying. You know, your brain works a certain way. Play to that. Yeah. Okay. Next thing. Did you like how I made it a ladies' night reference?
Yeah, you brought it back.
Thank you. Okay. You might be a woman with ADHD if you easily make friends but have trouble sustaining meaningful friendships over periods of time.
Yeah. That's a big one that I hear about. Maybe not. You're good with that initial making a lot of friends. I think that both can be true. That either you're really good at like making friends but not good at keeping long-term friendships, or it might be that you just really feel like you don't do well with social interactions in general. You might have a split-second connection with somebody or share a lot of information with somebody and feel like you're connecting and then not really have a long-term connection. That tends to do with the frontal lobe of your brain. I'm trying to remember the specific name of the part I'm talking about. I don't think that's it. Anyway, the part of your brain that manages relationships and social dynamics and processing and that sort of thing can work differently with ADHD. And you can have a really hard time recognizing what's going on in a social situation. So you are more likely to, maybe you do have that immediate connection. I think ADHD folks can be especially adept at like making an initial connection, finding something fun to talk about, finding like you are
high energy, coming to the table like excited to like meet somebody. Yeah, absolutely.
They're like bringing the enthusiasm for that initial relationship and stuff, and then as things continue, either you maybe missed that person wasn't into you like you were into the conversation that you were having, or you do develop a friendship, but then stuff happens. You feel like you say the wrong thing or something gets misunderstood, or you worry that they're rejecting you and you pull away. Something happens there and you struggle to maintain those really long-term friendships and feel close to people.
Something that happened today for me that I think is an example of this. I'm not very close with my colleagues at the moment. Not that I work remotely and it's just been a weird work situation. I don't know if it's a generational thing, but like when I'm instant messaging with somebody, that's conversation. I'm sitting there and I'm having that conversation, but some people treat that as like, I can come back to that in 30 minutes. Yeah. I had 2 different conversations like that today that were very frustrating to me because I'm like right here wanting to talk and I'm excited to talk about this thing. And it's obviously like a text message sort of conversation that they feel like they can come back to every 30 minutes. Yep. And that was frustrating to me because like when I want to talk, let's fucking talk. Yeah. I want to interact because that really caters to the way that my brain works. It's hard for me to like pick something up and then drop it and come back to it later, and take like long breaks in a conversation. I'd rather just hash it out right then and there and get it over with, Fucking normies, I swear.
Yeah, I think that can be... Did that leave you like questioning the relationship and how they felt about you when they weren't continuing it?
Of course it does. Because you're like, are they mad at me? Because I'm assuming that they're sitting there looking at the same chat. Right. What's actually happening is they've switched tabs or they've gotten away from their desk. Like that's what's really happening. Right. But in my brain, anxiety's building. Yes. Because I'm like, why aren't you responding? Yeah. Like you're obviously having the same experience as me. You're sitting here looking at this chat. Yeah. But you're not responding. Well, that's not fair to me.
Yeah. And something that can happen is that when you have ADHD, you might be used to speaking before you got the chance to really think about it, to saying something and it just comes out of your mouth. Mm-hmm. And maybe that hurts somebody's feelings or somebody takes it the wrong way or reads into it. And you're used to that happening. And so whether or not that's happening in the present, you can worry about that happening. So it might just be that your coworker got up to, use the bathroom and pet their cat and came back. And that sounds like a euphemism or something. Anyway.
What are they doing in the bathroom?
Ladies' night. Okay. So, but yeah, so you might have a coworker who just got distracted from the conversation. Or you might have somebody who's upset with you and you didn't mean to upset them and that's not what you meant to say. But it's hard to tell the difference when you have the habit of being in that social interaction anyway.
And the reality is that I am anxious over this. Yeah. And it doesn't really matter what's going on their end. I'm getting worked up. Right. Oh, ladies, we've got to learn how to let these things go,
And then... Yeah, coming from that place of anxiety is also going to be disruptive to your relationships because you might go into that like preventing catastrophe mode and that's not great in a friendship. That's not a good place to be. The other person's going to wonder what's going on.
Yeah.
You might be acting weird, and like that's going to cause disruption to your relationships as well. So
I want you to I want to take the remaining time that we have together and talk through. That makes it sound so sad. Ladies' night is a short-lived.
It's coming to a close. Ladies, it's been a great one. Let's do it again soon.
We still got 15 minutes.
Okay.
It's fine. Talk us through the different types of ADHD. And then I would love to hit on RSD. Is that what it's called? Yeah.
Okay, let's do it. Okay, so the different types of ADHD are inattentive and hyperactive and then mixed. So you might have some of both. And hyperactive ADHD is kind of that like classic, what we picture ADHD to be, with the really like bouncing off the walls little white boy.
Yeah, no school like the old school. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, that's the person who's going to be more likely to like say things impulsively or do things impulsively, and that might get them into trouble. They might be the person who's like super talkative or loud or whatever. And then inattentive is somebody who's also dealing with ADHD, but they seem more disengaged. They're like losing interest in the conversation and they're off doing something else, or they're like focusing on different things, but their ADHD doesn't come across as hyperactive. It comes across as just like not paying attention, not very engaged. They're kind of in their own things.
It almost seems to be like more of social, of like how you manage interactions with other humans.
Yeah.
Specifically, right?
I think that can be true, that there are kind of two different things that can happen with ADHD too, which is where social interactions are tough, but you like keep doing them and maybe you even get better at them as time goes on, or social interactions are tough and you kind of pull back.
Right.
I don't know that that's specifically what's happening. I think that there's maybe some slight differences in what's actually happening in the brain with inattentive versus hyperactive. I'm not totally sure. I have some theories, but we'll get into that at a different time.
Okay.
But the reason we're bringing that up today specifically is that for the longest time, we thought that women just had inattentive ADHD, and that's why it didn't show up. And the fact of the matter is that women have both, either or.
Ladies, there isn't a thing a man can do that we can't do. Okay,
Backwards
we can have
and in heels.
both types of ADHD. Backwards and heels, baby. Girl power.
Yeah, they can have both, but something that can be unique to women or to other people who weren't able to like socially acceptably have this sort of hyperactive ADHD is that they might experience an internal hyperactivity. So on the outside, they appear like calm, cool, and collected, and inside they feel like things are going wild.
Okay. And that's more of a social thing, right?
That's more of a social thing.
The little boys allowed to run around screaming in the classroom are more allowed to do that.
They were told little girls don't act like that. Little girls are quiet. Little girls do whatever. And so you had to do those things. Or just in your household, those things were unacceptable.
Yeah, it feels like we are, I don't know, like two objects that are the same size being squeezed into two different shaped containers. You know, like ADHD is this object, like this foam block, you know, and I'm squeezing it into a vase. And the boy's vase looks a lot different than the girl's vase.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, so it's like you've got these social expectations but the ADHD is the same, right? We have the same thing, but it's just being pushed onto us in different ways.
That's a good way to put that. There's already the
That's
analogy.
why I started a fucking podcast, baby. Let's go, ladies' night.
There's already.
I'm sorry.
Are you having a nice time?
I'm feeling great.
That's good. That's definitely an analogy that gets used a lot with neurodivergence, is the like square peg in a round hole sort of analogy. But I think that's a really good way to put it, that depending on your social situation, you've been fit into these different shaped holes, and that's going to produce something that looks very different. Please stop making eyebrows at me. I'm trying to do a podcast.
Fit what in the holes? What was it? Ladies, I'm sorry.
Okay.
I'm feeling too good. Talk to us about RSD.
Okay.
And the reason I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. The reason I want to bring this up, Miranda, the inspiration for tonight's episode, which I'm sorry, it's been such a off the rails episode. Miranda should have done you better than this. She also wanted to know about RSD, rejection sensitivity dysphoria.
Rejection sensitive dysphoria.
Sensitive dysphoria. She asked about that, so I wanted to take a few minutes to ask you about what that is. I see it going around online a little bit.
Yeah.
Talk to me about info dump. Tell me what you know about RSD.
Oh no, I haven't reached my optimum autism level of information to info dump on this. But I do like talking about it, and it is something that's being talked about more and more. I think it's really important to know about. So what people should know, my caveat to this is that from what I gather, we don't really know that we're very, very new to studying this part. It's not something that's like diagnosable at this point.
Is it specific to ADHD or anything? Or?
But it tends to be specific to ADHD.
Okay.
I have seen some people say that it's specific to people who have both ADHD and autism. And even some people who are saying that it can just be with autism. But most commonly, it's associated with ADHD. So let's talk about.
And generally, we could say it's associated with neurodiversity.
We can definitely say that it's that it's linked with neurodiversity, neurodivergence. So, what we think is true is that there's probably some physiological difference. So some like actual brain difference with this. That there's a real thing happening here. It's not just something that like develops over time from experience. That there's probably some predisposition to it, but basically rejection sensitivity is when the biggest thing that people talk about and experience with it is having an actual physical reaction of pain to being rejected or being perceived as being rejected.
Yeah.
That we say a lot, that like rejection hurts. But these folks will say, that's not a metaphor for me. It physically hurts. I feel it in my body. It's like a knife stabbing me. They'll describe a particular sensation a lot of the time that goes along with it. And it makes rejection something, of course, really to be avoided. And rejection can be especially common with neurodivergent folks because we don't always fit in, or we'll misread a social situation, or we do the thing and then somebody rejects us. And so it can be common, and that can like build up this cycle.
Ladies, I married your therapist at gmail.com. Give me the address of who rejected you. Okay. I'm going to toot my own horn a little bit here, ladies. I work out. Okay. I will come and clobber them. Okay. Clobber them. Tell me who rejected you. You're beautiful and you deserve better. That's all I want to say. Please go on, Ashlyn.
No, I think that wraps it up.
So we're really talking about, like, I feel a specific articulable physical sensation when I perceive that I am rejected.
Yeah. So that's one of the key factors, is that people will say that they like feel rejection, and other people will be like, yeah, rejection does hurt. And they're like, that's not what I mean. I mean, it physically hurts. That makes sense because when we have a really strong reaction to something, when something really triggers that like survival part of us, one of the body's ways of managing that is pain, because pain gets us to pay attention to things.
Right.
So I think that all makes sense in a loop as part of it. But there are things that make it more likely to be rejected that come along with having ADHD, like we were just talking about, where friendships can be hard to maintain, relationships can be hard to maintain. And so there's going to be a lot more opportunity for this to happen. And the hard thing is as life experience teaches you that, like, yeah, rejection is something that's going to keep happening, you're going to be more and more fearful of it, more likely to get into relationships that aren't healthy for you, that come with like those big promises and everything, like we've talked about in kind of the abusive relationships episode, and like more likely to be in situations that aren't healthy for you. But yeah, rejection sensitive dysphoria is a real thing that happens, and a lot of people end up feeling like they, maybe they start to isolate to protect themselves from that, or they might have a rejection where they're feeling the consequences of that for years after, and the pain of that for a really long time. So it can just make relationships feel really tough. Sorry, my cough got up to me.
No, you're okay. You're doing great. You sound great. I think that I can relate to that, and I think it's because so frequently, or part of the reason I can relate to that is so frequently rejection happens, but we're not entirely sure why.
Yeah.
We put so much of ourselves into our work or into our relationships, and our brain works a little different than other people. I'm speaking like broad brush strokes for neurodiverse people here, neurodivergent people. Our brain works a little bit differently. So we're specifically like trying to make sure that we fit in, because we're like consciously aware. We're told at every turn that we don't.
Yep.
That we don't. We're constantly having to mask, and it's fucking
you're
exhausting.
Constantly getting that message, and then that like confirmation bias is going to fit in. You believe you're going to be rejected, so you're looking for it. And so like another part of RSD is that you can misread rejection even when it's not happening.
Yeah.
And still have that pain of rejection. You can have a really hard time starting projects or starting tasks if you think that there might be a chance for failure, because failure can feel like rejection.
Yeah. And it's so hard to swallow like a rejection, because we're getting down to the core of like being a human, which is that we are desperately looking for community. We're looking for connection with other people.
It's a need. It's a biological
need. And when we feel like that's so fraught or so frail to begin with, that the fear of rejection becomes like a survival thing. So if you feel a physical pain when you're being rejected, remember that that's your body reminding you you're a human who deserves to be loved and deserves to be connected with other people. And I'm with you. I'm with you, and we're trying, with this podcast, we're trying to encourage, specifically attract and encourage people who are neurodivergent. But we're hoping that if you're a fucking normie, that you come in and you're able to better understand what it's like to be neurodivergent, because I think that just that knowledge and that understanding, we can create more equitable workspaces, we can create more equitable relationships where people, and I think that we're all stronger for being able to allow people to operate the way that their brains truly are. Yeah,
I think it's so much easier to live together when we get each other, when we understand what's happening, that even though it's not our personal experience, that like this is a real thing that's happening for people.
Yeah.
And when people are, maybe making too big a deal about a breakup or a friendship loss or a perceived rejection or the fear of failure, like they might be having this very real thing happening for them. And not only might they be having this, but also they've probably faced more of that in their life in general. And that's very hard to deal with. Something else that's a part of this, and why it's specific to ADHD and neurodivergence, is the difficulty with emotional regulation. And so when you do face rejection, you can have a really hard time pulling your emotions back together. That you might have big explosion at feeling a rejection, and that can really increase rejection, because that's something that people really push themselves away from, and it can just make this really tough. But also, like, you're not broken. There's a real difference that you're dealing with, and this is something I deal with a lot with counseling clients, and it's something that we like work through, and they start to gain more confidence.
And I think the best thing you can do if you feel like you fall into this category of having this RSD is to kind of comfort yourself and help yourself, like equip yourself with the knowledge of why you feel these ways.
And the validation that you're going through a real thing. You're not just worse at handling rejection than other people, that like it impacts you differently than it impacts other people.
Yeah.
You're dealing with a real thing. And
also try to take the time to educate the people that you come into contact with in ways that are appropriate. If you're in a relationship with somebody whose brain doesn't work quite like yours, take the time to like give them a heads up as to like what you're dealing with. Because when you create take your space, girl. Take your fucking space. Let people know what works for you. Go into your workplace and in a respectful and equitable way. Let people know like who you are and the ways that you need to work. If you need to be able to like get up and walk around during a 4-hour-long conference room meeting. Like, take the time to do, like, to secure those rights, like, fight for your rights.
Yeah.
And educate the people around you. Send them this fucking podcast if you feel so inclined. Like, I think that I've said it before. It's not you that needs to change. It's the world that needs to change. And that starts with people taking ownership of who they are.
Yeah, that starts with education and with people getting to develop more understanding. And with understanding and familiarity comes empathy. That we know that one of the biggest factors in empathy is like having met somebody dealing with the thing that you're talking about, is like really knowing that it exists and getting to have a real human in front of them who represents that thing. That can be a huge deal in getting to develop an understanding.
Because you said a lot of people's responses to RSD is like, yeah, rejection does hurt.
Yeah.
Of course people say that. Rejection does hurt for everybody.
Yeah.
But, like, you're dealing with something different, right?
Yeah.
Rejection physically hurts. Mm-hmm. I'm particularly aware and sensitive to that. I'm with you.
Yeah, throughout my life, I've had, like, to show the other side of that, if you're dealing with this and you're like, but doesn't everybody feel that way? On the other side of this, I have had a lot of fear of, like, abandonment in my life, that I've really worried about people are going to leave, and that might be very tough for me. But I don't have RSD. What's hard for me is when I don't understand why a relationship ends, or when I'm afraid that somebody thinks poorly of me. And we can get more into some of those differences down the road and what, how those things can relate, or different terms that we can use for that. But, like, I don't experience rejection quite like this.
Yeah.
And when people tell me that they're going through this, like, that's a valid thing, and that's it is tough to deal with rejection. Rejection hurts. It certainly does, but I don't experience it like that. And it's good to know that, like, you are having a valid but also unique experience, and it's okay that it hurts like that. And also there are steps to be able to take so that you can better cope with.
And I think that's one of the things that makes you such an exceptional therapist, is that you're not afraid of being rejected. You're not there to, like, make sure your clients like you. Mm-hmm. They're allowed to feel their feelings and get uncomfortable, and you're very comfortable with, going to an uncomfortable place, or having a client that you're not sure that they like you. Mm-hmm. But that's not, like, motivating you to keep going, because you're motivated to help them heal, not to, like, be their favorite person.
Yeah, absolutely. It's not my job to be your favorite person. And in fact, that does very little good to you if I end up being your favorite person. Like, you see me for an hour once a week. I want you to, like, get to be engaged with the other people in your life. And that's very happy for me. There was something else that I think I had a thought on here. Oh, just in general, not just educating people about I have RSD and that might be why I react this way, or I need a lot of reassurance from you because I have RSD. That is a good thing to ask for in relationships. Mm-hmm. And it's okay to ask for reassurance. Yeah. But another thing is just knowing that you're ADHD. If you learn something about yourself during this episode, if you think that there might be, that might be possibly something that's contributing to your life, educating other people on the fact that you have ADHD is so powerful and can be so helpful. And I'm excited for more people to be learning that about themselves and to get to do that.
I used to work with a guy named Brendan, and first of all, we would carpool to work sometimes. And Brendan, if you're listening, I'm sorry, you have shitty taste in music. It was awful, because one day on Mondays he would get to choose the song, and on Tuesdays I would get to choose the songs, and on Tuesdays we were bumping, But he said that, like, after a year of dating his girlfriend, he went to her and was like, "Hey, is this still working for you?" And she was like, "Yes, is it still working for you?" And he, like, announced this to me, like, "So we're good." And I was like, "The fuck you talking?" Like, every hour, Ashlyn's like, "Are you gonna leave me?"
Do you love me? Do you still love me? Hey, Price, I haven't asked since we started this episode. Yeah. And do you still care about me?
I care about you so much.
No
girl.
way.
Yeah,
that's awesome.
I love you so much. I'm not going anywhere.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, well, I just got a tap on the shoulder. Sven, the Swedish masseuse, has just let me know that his hourly, his time we booked with him is over. So, ladies, the foot massages are done for the night.
Oh, time to pack it away. Bye, Sven.
Yeah, you can keep the fuzzy robes that I handed out at the beginning of the episode. Just go ahead and let's pass around this wastebasket to collect your face masks, and we can all get ready to turn in for the evening.
Okay, that sounds nice.
The end of ladies' night.
The end of ladies' night. We'll do it again.
Yeah. This has been a fun episode. I've really enjoyed myself.
I'm really glad.
Well, ladies, thank you so much for your time. Ashlyn.
And everybody else, thank you for your time.
We were all ladies today.
Men, non-binary folks, thank you all for being here.
We were all ladies today.
Everybody's a lady tonight.
Yeah, exactly. Well, Ashlyn, seriously though, thank you for your time.
Price, thank you for your time.
And we will see you next time on I Married Your Therapist.
But first, I'm going to tell everybody where they can find me.
Oh, right. Yeah. I'm sorry.
No, you're good. You can find the podcast at I Married Your Therapist on Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube, or email us at imarriedyourtherapist@gmail.com. And you can find me directly at therapy_with_Ash on Instagram.
You keep it together, Yeah. It's not that I failed, everyone. It's that my brain works differently. Remember that, okay? Remember that. I didn't fail the outro. My brain works differently. Okay, let's blast through this again just for fun, okay? Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you for your time.
And we'll see you next time on I Married Your Therapist. Nailed it. First try.
You rocked that. That was awesome.
Man, and now we're going to go get sushi. What
Yay!
a great way to top off ladies' night.
You guys, we started this new habit where after podcast night we used to cook, and it was so frustrating because it'd be so late, and now we get sushi, and it's so amazing.
Nothing better than that Central North Carolina sushi.
It's just the best.